The Emerald Knight was in need of a new release. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys, DC Multiverse, the JLA's Green Lantern, Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart is the go-to leader of the Green Lantern Corps, a natural leader with a tactical military-trained mind. Jon has also been a frequent member of the Justice League, and can step up to command when the League needed to take orders or when a mission doesn't fall under his realm of expertise. A long-time Green Lantern, Jon has felt the weight of making mistakes in this dangerous field, and he's sworn not to repeat them at any cost. I'm not aware of Todd McFarlane having a power ring, and yet he's constructed another Jon Stewart figure. Just before we get a closer look at that figure, the tape measure is going to tell us that Jon Stewart stands at 6 3/4 inches in height, or this Green Lantern is 17 centimeters tall. Marking now the fourth Jon Stewart figure we've gotten from McFarlane Toys, and yet this is the first time we've gotten a brand new mold for him. In fact, the only other times we've gotten Jon Stewart have all pretty much used this mold here. This figure has been released already, 3 times? One on its own, one with energy constructs that weren't packed with the original figure release, and then he was released again as a glow-in-the-dark variation. I do like the look of, though, this Jon Stewart, although the thing that kind of confuses me is bringing in the classic Hal Jordan. I thought it would simply just be a case of simple head swaps, and they would have just essentially used the same body. You can see, though, proportionally, though, Jon Stewart's torso specifically doesn't look at all like the torso that they used for Hal Jordan, and they've also decided to texture his costume, something that Jordan never had before. Yeah, there was also the Superpowers Jon Stewart too, which, funny though, like this figure, wasn't using at all the same mold that they decided to use for the Superpowers Hal Jordan. That being the case, though, the character does come included with a trading card, a display stand, some energy constructs, and the figure's feet, not for him, though, but for Plastic Man. Backing that, though, a bit, let's first start things first with looking at the trading card. The trading card is actually from issue number 87, which I believe is the first appearance of Jon Stewart. The only thing is missing, though, is some text bubbles all around him. Something along the lines of, like, they whipped Green Lantern, now let them try me. It's kind of a sign of the times. The actual card, though, does depict a somewhat similar suit, although the thing that's a little bit different is the emblem. I do kind of wish that in a way that they could have used something of a similar classic Green Lantern emblem than the one they decided to settle on. But of course, he is holding Hal Jordan, who's now fallen. Nice looking card. I mean, there's not a whole lot going on in the back, but to be fair, though, issue 87 was also a white background, so they really have just carried the image over from there. Funny, though, it still also says Green Lantern down below, and it also says JLA. Nowhere to be found does it say Jon Stewart until the moment you flip it around. The real name is listed as well as a paragraph read, and it isn't so much necessarily the first opening stories or the first early adventures of Jon Stewart. It's kind of more just a very generic read-up of the character, which is fine and good. I mean, it's not about problem at all. Nice looking trading card, though, but again, it does to look at this, it does make me really miss the fact that they couldn't have settled on a very similar classic looking emblem. Let's move that off to the side. The figure also comes included, as already mentioned, Plastic Man's legs. Now, the legs themselves also have his feet. Nicely molded overall. We're going to go ahead and take the body because we haven't really done all that much with it. We had the arms earlier from when we looked at, Aquaman. And Aquaman, I didn't decide to put the arms on just because Batman's also going to come with some pretty crazy looking arms for Plastic Man. He's also going to come with 2 different head sculpts. So I haven't really done anything at all until right around now. We can take the legs. We want to make sure, of course, they're facing the right way. So the curves of the feet go obviously inward. We're just going to take these and we're going to sandwich these on here. Now, I may, though, afterwards, in between reviews, I may have to even heat these up just a little bit more so I can get the legs properly on here. I can already see right away. I don't have them completely attached onto the pegs. But what we're going to do is close enough of a job for at least right now, and I'll fix it up a little bit later. Attaching onto the legs, that's basically what we got so far. Still need the arms, still need the head. And again, we'll be looking at that with Batman. Funny, it's weird that Batman, I'm going to talk a lot about that when we look at the review of the Black Batman, is that he really is required to get both the heads, the 2 different heads, and the other pair of arms. So even though it is simply just a repaint of that original Batman, you really necessarily need it in order to complete Plastic Man. Let's move the figure off to the side. Now, he does come with constructs. The disappointing thing about it, though, is nowhere to be found is that he doesn't come include with the actual Green Lantern. The lantern, this just happens to be the one I got packed along with the classic Hal Jordan. Nice lantern. It was a little on the rubbery side, but at least you could say that Hal got one. you know, it would be disappointing. Why would he not have got included with this? But what he does get impact instead, I feel somewhat is a little underwhelming. Just before we talk about that, the figure also comes included with a display stand. Nothing really new to report there. Still has the DC logo, still has the peg. I'm going to bring that back a little bit later. The figure also comes, like I said, with those energy constructs. Now, one is okay. I mean, this is basically like a little spiraled piece of plastic. My guess in mind is this is something that's going to go more on the hand that has the ring and not necessarily on the other hand. And then on the other hand, he has this sort of like swooshing effect. I feel like it doesn't really necessarily belong with a character like a Green Lantern. I don't feel at all it belongs to even like a release of John Stewart. I feel like this is something that probably would have been maybe belonging to like a Flash at one point, and they would have just cast this into different plastic. That's my guess. I mean, if to look at the things that we've gotten with other figure releases, specifically even like John Stewart, we're going to bring in the ones we got with John Stewart's release. Now, he got himself like a little mini gun. I mean, not even so mini, like a large Gatling gun. He also came with a backpack. The backpack can't plug onto anything on this one. So if you thought, for example, well, I'll just pillage the accessories that came included with the other John Stewart, you can't do that. You use this, you just can't use this because there's no hole on the back of the figure's body. Yeah, see what I mean? There's no hole. You didn't believe me. Oh, shame on you. Yeah, there's no hole on the back, so you can't use this backpack at all. So we'll just move that off to the side. I wish he's a military man. I wish that he could have come with something a little bit more interesting like this. And certainly a lot more interesting than just getting a swoosh effect. If you, though, want to take those pieces, by the way. Now, again, he has one closed fist. He has one gripping hand. I personally like to use this piece over top of his ring. So it looks like the ring is sort of starting to, summon some energy here. I think it works a little bit better on this side than it does on this side. On this side, though, just the fact that I am using these, even though I'm not going to display them at all with these accessories, this basically will just... You could fit it really up his arm this way. You could also just clamp it on his arm too. I mean, it works the exact same way, and it still gives us a very underwhelming look to it. I mean, I guess the idea in mind is that he's swinging, but I mean, for this being like, he's had some pretty interesting things, not only in the cartoon, but also in the comics. I just feel like, is this the best they could have given him, being the fact that this is John Stewart after all? So I'm never going to really display him with these. I mean, if anything, I might even display him with this accessory, but this accessory is only just going to go back in the bag with everything else that basically doesn't get used with my displays. We'll just move off to the side. We'll take this also off too, and by removing it, it also gives me a chance to show you guys what the ring looks like. The ring isn't just a case of blobbing on some green paint and calling it a ring. No, they did in fact sculpt something somewhat resembling a ring, and I think it does look pretty good. Overall, I think, first of all, we'll start first thing with the head sculpt. Now, obviously, they wanted to go with a little bit more modern of a hairstyle. Like, if we wanted to go back to the original card, which I just happen to have now over here, going back with the original card, I would have maybe given his hair just a little bit more fullness on the sides. If, obviously, not that we're supposed to be really replicating the look, because clearly the costume is different. I would have liked just a little bit fuller of a hair, so we have more of kind of a classic-looking Hal Jordan. But, still, though, the head sculpt is really nicely done. Painted very well, sculpted exceptionally well. There's nothing at all I would have really changed to the head other than maybe just making the hair just a little fuller. I am going over here. We don't need clown hair. Just a little bit fuller on the sides. But overall, again, very, very happy with how the head sculpt turned out. I do think, though, it is a lot better of a head sculpt than we got with the original John Stewart. Just again, pick where you like to have your universe exist. I mean, obviously, from a modern standpoint, this Hal Jordan worked a little bit better. I kind of more myself like to display the characters with the classic looks, and I think this head sculpt works better for my situation, at least. Now, the bodies are very clearly different from one another, whereas this has a lot more panel lining to approach this more as like a modern-looking John Stewart. They definitely took more of the cues of a classic look when it came to this John Stewart. The only thing I don't really like about it is the fact they felt the need to texture the suit. Now, this wouldn't be so bad to bring back in Hal Jordan here. It wouldn't be so bad if both the figures had the same look. But by comparing the two, you can clearly see, Hal Jordan's is a much more smoother looking material. And obviously, Hal Jordan, they decided for John Stewart, they decided to texture it. I just don't think it makes much sense if you want the consistency between the two. The suits are obviously not the same. I mean, even the bodies, looking at the bodies, they're not exactly the same either. But I don't understand why they chose to texture the suit when they had already done such a good enough job with the classic-looking Hal Jordan. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. I mean, obviously, they had to really change the paint on his neck. It clearly didn't match his face. But all in all, though, for the rest of the figure, it looked really good. I just wish that instead of making... It meant more work, really, on the sculptor's part to go in there and very meticulously add this sort of weaving effect there on a suit. I really don't think it was necessary in the first place. I mean, even like I had said earlier, I think honestly, they could have even in fact just taken the Hal Jordan body and just used a different head sculpt. They could have, granted, painted it differently, but I think from a standpoint of a sculpt, if you already have a body that worked fine for a Green Lantern, why feel a need at all to change out the suit and texture something different? I have to think, though, like, they're probably going to be using this body down the road for something else. I can't imagine they're just solely tooling this only for Hal Jordan or for John Stewart. I just don't think it was necessary at all to add all the additional texturing when it really wasn't necessary in the first place. The paint for what it is pretty good. I mean, again, you got the green now across the shoulders. Jordan would not have had it. He has the black on the sleeves. And he's got, again, like a slightly different take to the Green Lantern symbol. Personally, for me, I would have rather if it had just been the classic symbol myself, but you could say for the argument standpoint that at least it's different from Hal Jordan's. And I guess for that, it's good. I just would have rather a classic look. The gloves are generally painted well. I mean, again, we've already looked at the fact that the ring, for as small as that may be, has been painted quite well too. And like, there really isn't any real paint problems. With like a character like this, there really shouldn't be paint problems anyways. The only thing I would say, though, is looking at his legs. It is obviously, there's a little bit more of a sheen to the plastic on this guy, but like when you're looking at his legs, I don't know why here and here there's a lot more of a sheen. I was almost even expecting when I took this guy out of the tray that there would be, sometimes not with McFarlane releases necessarily, but sometimes when you get a plastic figure out of the tray, there's sometimes like an oil, like a little settled oil there on the plastic. So I was really kind of expecting to go across and wipe my fingers, my hand across this and expect this to smear off. But it just looks like it's got this weird permanent sheen. You can see it on this leg more so. Again, it's not oil. It's nothing like I have to wipe this away at all, but it's just strange that it's here and it's on nowhere else on the figure's body. The boots down below, again, you got nicely painted there green boots. And again, you got the peg holes on the undersides of his feet. Nothing really new there. For the articulation on Hal Jordan, there we go again. For the articulation for John Stewart, he's going to rotate once again. It's on a ball joint. He does have quite a high reach, so even though these figures don't come with flight stands, if you want to get a flight stand, you could get really John Stewart in a pretty good flying pose. The head looks down about that low, and of course you can also move it back and forth as well. Arms, no issues there. You can easily rotate them all the way around. You can also as well bring these arms out, even really beyond the point of 90 degrees. There's also a swivel in the bicep. The figure does have a double hinge on the elbow, and the hand rotates all the way around. Yes, this hand also rotates all the way around. For his upper torso, once again, you got an upper torso ball joint. You can, of course, rotate it back and forth, too. The only thing, unfortunately, it does, as it normally is the case, if you're going to print anything like the front of his body, or really anything here, anytime you're going to be swiveling the body, it's going to break up the straight line of green that he has on the front of his torso. I mean, obviously, there's no way really around that, but the figure does have a ball joint, so you can move it up and down, back and forth this way. He has a lower torso abdomen area too. I mean, the only other thing I would say too is like the colors of the green don't quite match the colors of his trunks. Now here clearly they're using a green plastic. Here clearly they're using the paint on top of the plastic. The greens don't quite 100% match, but they're pretty close. The legs do split out. You can take the legs and move forward, move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. The figure does have a double hinge on the knee. No articulation here for the boot, unfortunately to say, but he does have at least articulation in the ankle. You can rock it back and forth. And yes, John Stewart, even though I called him Hal Jordan a couple times, John Stewart does have toe articulation as well. Good looking figure. The only thing again about it is I just feel like they unnecessarily needed to add some additional sculpting when the figure didn't really even need it in the first place. Head looks good. The hair, again, I probably would have made it a little bit more fuller just to match the issue artwork that they used, obviously, to include with the trading card. And again, like when you're displaying it with Hal Jordan, I myself, at least, when I like to have the idea of having all the Green Lanterns displayed together, I'd like to have, some unity between them. Not that necessarily the costumes had to match, because clearly is the case, like John Stewart's got shoulder pads painted in green. Hal Jordan doesn't have that. But at least to have the symbols match the same, I think I would have liked. And I feel like they didn't need to necessarily texture the body. If they had saved the time to texture the body and just simply use the body we already have here for Hal Jordan and just done a head swap, I think that was all that really was necessary. I'd hate to think that on paper, when it came to budgeting this character, they had to kind of set aside some funds and say, okay, well, we're going to sculpt it with some additional weaving, like kind of basket weaving there on his body. That is going to kind of eat into some of the plastic cost that we would have to produce. And that might mean then we would have to sacrifice some of the cost of producing some additional added accessories. I rather would have just said, use this body and then use then the additional cost to produce better, like, effect pieces to go along with the figure. This one's okay. This one I don't think I'm ever going to really find myself displaying with Jon Stewart. And at the very least, if he is, though, a Green Lantern, you would think at the very least he should come included with his trusty lantern. I gotta say, while I am liking the look of this new Jon Stewart, I'm not necessarily liking the choice of accessories that they went with. The spiraled energy effect works well for the ring, and even if I don't decide to use it with Jon Stewart, I could very well then use it with Hal Jordan. That's going to stay in my collection space, but what though isn't going to stay is the swooshing energy effect. I don't think it belongs necessarily with Jon Stewart. I don't think really for that matter it belongs with any other Green Lantern. It's just going to go ultimately though with the rest of my bag of accessories that just don't serve a purpose. I usually just kind of keep them stored away. If ever be the point down the road I decide, okay, you know what? Where's that swoosh piece? Where did I put that? It's all kind of really all relegated in one big baggie. The look, though, of Jon Stewart is nice. Even though, again, I just don't think it is necessary that they had to take the time to texture the body, it does add a little bit something to the looking at the figure. Though, unfortunately, by doing that, it then makes him look even different than Hal Jordan. And again, the same case was also there when we looked at the Superpowers versions. Jon Stewart was notably taller, and also Green Lantern's Hal Jordan was even a different color of costume. I don't mind, again, you have other characters from one core, but the thing about it, though, is every core member should be somewhat consistent. It doesn't have to be necessarily the case that the symbols all have to match, because clearly Jon Stewart has a different Green Lantern symbol than Hal Jordan, but I think, if anything, just keep the kind of plastic that you choose. If you want to have smooth plastic suits on like Hal Jordan, just kind of keep it consistent when you're doing it with Jon Stewart, too. What do you guys think when it comes to this? Do you like the idea that Jon Stewart does have a texturing to his suit, or do you feel like they could have easily just gotten away with using the same body as Hal Jordan and just done a simple head swap? What do you guys think? Down below. Now, of course, we are making some substantial progress. We're now 3 figures into the 4-figure wave of Plastic Man. That then leaves us with a black suit Batman, and through that, not only will we be looking at the 4th figure, but we'll also be finally completing Plastic Man. And I have a good suspicion that I'm probably going to be leaving Plastic Man and doing a separate review of him, because there's going to be a lot I'm going to want to talk about. Have you guys had also the chance to be collecting any of this wave? And if so, what's your favorite figures from this? If you guys also, in the meantime, did enjoy this video, do it a solid. Do it a solid. Throw it a like. You have nothing else to do. Well, I'm sure you have other things to do, but at least right now, you don't have any. I like to think you don't have anything else to do right now. Make sure you hit this video with a like. Make sure, of course, if you haven't already, that you hit that subscribe button down below. But the most important thing, the thing I always ask of you guys, is make sure you're coming back regularly, not only to see the review of Batman, not only to see the review of Plastic Man, but also see the other things that I'm posting on a regular basis. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.